Good morning and welcome to our seminar sponsored by the Indiana Parks Alliance and the Indiana Department of Natural Resources and of course hosted here by Hirons. We'll be calling this session today Indiana State Parks and Nature Preserves Celebrating Today and Envisioning the Future. We're going to give everyone here today, and thank you by the way for joining us, an overview of the Indiana State Parks and Indiana's Division of Natural Preserves today, talk a little bit about your successes and challenges, and then look at what the future might bring for us statewide. We have four great panelists to bring years of experience with the Indiana DNR to the table today, and let me introduce them. First, we have John Davis, current Deputy Director of Land Management for Indiana DNR. Sitting next to him is Tom Homan, the President of the Indiana Parks Alliance. And Tom, when you get a chance later on, if you could explain what the Parks Alliance mission is all about, everything, for those who aren't familiar. Jerry Pajic, who is a former director of the Indiana State Parks. Welcome, Jerry. And he's also on the IPA Board of Directors. And IPA is the Parks Alliance. We're not talking about beer here, right, Jerry?
Right.
And then we have John Goss, who's a former DNR director, also on the IPA Board. And I'm your host, MC, Mike Murphy. I'm Senior VP here at Hirons. Gentlemen, welcome and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
We know that Hoosiers love their parks. All of us are frequent park visitors. In fact, I just bought my son an annual pass for Christmas, as a matter of fact. One of the best investments I think you can make in Indiana. So let's start talking about the quick look at the two divisions of DNR today. And for that, we'll start with John Davis, the current Deputy Director for Land Management at DNR. John, both these divisions have something significant to celebrate. Tell us more.
Well, Mike, I will, and I want to thank you for giving the gift of an annual pass. We like to encourage that. That's a great gift, and people that aren't familiar with parks get a chance to discover. Parks and nature preserves do both have celebrations. We're just wrapping up the 100th anniversary of the state park system. That system was a gift to the people of Indiana for the centennial in 1916, and our founder, Colonel Richard Lieber, who was a real pioneer in parks all over the country, and in fact was part of the national park system, which also started in 1916. Colonel Richard Lieber helped begin that with the purchase of the first two state parks, McCormick's Creek and Turkey Run State Park. We had birthday celebrations at various events and all over the system in all the parks, most of the parks, and we built a number of new features and rehabbed some old ones. The celebration was really a great success, and we did some nice things during the season. And then this year, 2017, is the 50th anniversary of the Division of Nature Preserves. And Nature Preserves created in 1967 to protect unique features. There's about 250 nature preserves around the state, and they are going to hold some different kinds of hikes, guided hikes through some of the preserves. These preserves celebrate and protect everything from unique natural areas, glades, fens, old-growth forests, to even some archaeological features that and geologic features. So I'd urge people to get out and see some nature preserves this year. They're really fantastic places.
Great. Now, Tom, I know you've been involved in the centennial as well, the park system, but let's back up a little bit and tell me more about the Parks Alliance, how it came to be, what your mission is, and how you hope to impact the system here statewide.
Sure, I'd be glad to. First of all, the Parks Alliance has only been around for really a couple of years officially. It's kind of, I used to work for Department of Natural Resources myself. I was Director of Engineering Division, retired in 2012. And I saw the need for an organization like IPA and talked to some other people that felt the same need, and we worked on getting this organization together. Our mission is to protect Indiana state parks and state-owned nature preserves. and to advocate for them, to let the public know what gems they have in these properties and the needs for those properties. And we try to support through advocacy and letting public and legislators know about those needs, which we'll probably get into talking a little bit about later, that we feel are not being adequately funded today, and just let the public encourage them to use them and take advantage of them.
Now, it seems that you talked about advocating to legislators. It seems like parks have always been a pretty bipartisan issue. I mean, it's not really been a Republican or Democrat. So do you find pretty broad support among your legislator friends for the parks?
Oh, yeah, there's definitely there's broad support, but I think people take them for granted. That's the best way that I can phrase it, because since I already said I was retired, so I've been around a while, and they've always been there. And they've always been, like you say, a bipartisan thing, supported by both parties and by the public, tremendous support from the public. And I think they take them for granted and just think they'll always be there. And support has decreased, financial support, and there's some real problems out there.
John, you haven't been around 100 years, but you sure know about the 100 years of the park system. Give us a snapshot of how the system stands as we speak today.
Well, I feel 100 years old sometimes, but your question to Tom, I think the value parks have a really tremendous value to folks locally that the legislators do appreciate, and they know about. They hear from people. But real assets to folks in small towns and rural counties, as well as the urban. I think there on the screen now is kind of a list of a bunch of facts and figures about where we are. We in the State Parks Division, they own about 180,000 acres, or manage about 180,000 acres. Almost 100,000 acres of that is reservoir property, and there's a list of 2,700 buildings, including 7 inns. You can imagine the kind of responsibilities that go with those buildings. Many of those are historic in nature, tremendous amount of CCC, civilian conservation Corps projects in Indiana. Have a great heritage there. So,
which is really those are about 80 years old now.
Yeah, 80 years old. Built tremendous effort by guys in the 30s, but 80 years old, you feel 80 years old. I feel 100. There you go.
So you talk about the physical plants. You must have thousands of employees. Tell us about the employees, and our young people. We're always trying to encourage them to be involved in parks and have an interest. Are there opportunities for young people to be involved and to actually work in the parks?
Well, there are a lot of opportunities, and that slide that named all those miles of trails and buildings, we manage those places with about 350 full-time folks, about 150 full-time folks at our park inns added to that. We do add a lot of folks in the summertime, usually in the summertime, 11 to 1,200 people, but we have parks that have some kind of rush at times, not in the summer. The busiest recreation time in some parks is the fall for
Pokagon in the wintertime, right?
Yeah, Pokagon with a great asset in that toboggan run and a lot of outdoor activities. So we do add seasonal folks to help us, mostly in the summer, and we have about 400 or 500 part-time folks at the state park inns also.
Then how do people find out about jobs with DNR? Is there like a careers tab on the website somewhere, or
there is? We do lots of outreach, but I would urge people to go to the website and look. There is a careers path there that talks about the process, the types of jobs. People should realize too that when we operate an inn or a park, we also operate a wastewater treatment plant and have all the infrastructure that goes with operating and hosting hundreds of people. And we have, as you saw in that slide, thousands of campsites. So there's a myriad of jobs available that you don't have to be want to just hike around to work for DNR. You can be a sanitary engineer, a lawyer, all sorts of science folks.
And you don't just have to be a botanist or a scientist.
Right.
That's right. That's great. Jerry, I understand that every Hoosier, I should say, lives within an hour or less of a state park. Was that by design? Did it happen by happenstance? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it definitely was by design. I remember back when I started way back in 1972, I was working on the State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, where you analyze what are the recreation needs in the state. And that was one of the goals way back then. But actually, I found that it actually started way back with Richard Lieber. And of course, we didn't think in terms of a 1 hour drive in 1916, but he wanted to someday have it within an hour of reach of everyone in the state. And I was very happy in 2004 when we opened Prophetstown State Park up by West Lafayette, by Battleground, in fact, that we actually achieved that goal.
That's great. So I'm going to put you on the spot right now. What's your favorite state park?
You know, I give that every time I get that. I always say, you know, I'm not going to identify that because it's like saying which child do you favor. So there's so different. You really can't compare them, but I keep that to myself.
Okay. All right. John Goss, former DNR director. How do people? What are the criteria to make a state park? Where does the money come from? What is that process like? And then you're going to have to tell me what your favorite state park is, or you're going to have to dodge it as well as Jerry did.
Thanks for the question, Mike. There are some really good criteria, and over the years there have been proposals from local communities to create state parks or take over county parks and turn them into state parks. So I'm going to just mention a few of the most important. A piece of land to be a state park really needs to be conserving and restoring a unique landscape, or have a unique historical feature like the Pioneer Village at Spring Mill. So that's why the Tallgrass Prairie at Prophetstown was ideal. Typically, the size of the parks is 2,000 to 3,000 acres. Is a good target, and we have a couple that are smaller than that, but they're very unique. The Mounds State Park near Anderson is Native American mounds. The fossil beds down on the Ohio River, 300+ million-year-old fossil beds, and that's really just about a 60-acre park. But those are very unique. Usually a couple thousand acres would be the target, and some are as big as 17,000 acres down at Patoka. In the last 10 years, new parks haven't been created. As Jerry said, we had a couple in 2004, but they are adding land to state parks that, again, add unique features, bring special natural areas would be the target. Nature preserves that are next to parks are very ideal also.
So is there a list, a future list of state parks, like the next time we get enough money or enough political will or whatever, that this is going to be the next state park, or is there such a list or not?
Since I've been gone for about 10 years, I'm going to kick that one back to John Davis.
I'd be happy to address that. There is not a list of areas that we want to turn into state parks. We're open to the idea of a new state park, but a new state park is we're just completing Prophetstown after many years of acquiring land. It's a big undertaking. We feel pretty protective of these 20-some that we have too. Like in some states you can drive down the road and see a sign that says state park, and you pull off and there's no one there, and it's 3 or 4 unattended campsites, and it's a state park, and they have 900 of them. in Indiana, we have really unique properties that carry a big responsibility. Kind of the properties carry a big responsibility to live up to being a state park. We have other places that are less visited and less is expected of those. So we don't have a list. We don't have a place that we really want to turn into a park. We do have a lot of perfections to make to the lands that we have now. You know, when you're managing a park that has some lakes on it or a stream, you want to protect that watershed. You want to protect your boundaries. There's lots of better land alignments that we could have than we do. So those are specific people that live around our parks. We visit with those folks. Park managers, part of their duty is have a relationship with those people. They may even be talking about when they're ready to sell, maybe we'll buy a piece of their property. But we don't have a wish list right now.
So how are they named? I mean, how did you come up with Prophetstown? Obviously, there's the connection to the Miami and the Shawnee and all that, but
yeah.
Is there a process for naming them? I noticed we don't have a Luke Kenley State Park yet, or anything.
No, not yet. But you know, if it would help, no. I think I'll let Jerry talk about that because I think Jerry did name that one, didn't you, Jerry?
Yeah, I think I named. Well, I had the good fortune of like 5 parks coming online during my tenure. But yeah, the interesting thing about that is sometimes it's a place name that is very logical. Prophetstown was one of those because of the historic nature. There was a place called Prophetstown right there, the village that was so important to our Indiana history. But I think back to Charlestown State Park, and we had a little contest, as I recall, asking people to suggest names, and there were a lot of unique names. I took a lot of flack because we ended up going with a very, what some people thought, bland name, just Charlestown, which was the town right there, and the name of the Army ammunition plant that we got most of the land through as a gift from the federal government. If somebody wanted to use Devil's Backbone State Park, which would have been probably, in hindsight, maybe better in terms of drawing people, but we went with the more conservative route and went with Charlestown.
I know there's one in Illinois called Starved Rock, and you always wonder what was going on there, why they call it
Right.
Starved Rock. Let's talk about nature preserves for a minute, John. Tell us about how those are different from parks. How do they come about, and what's the difference in the mission between a park and a preserve, I guess?
Yeah, a nature preserve, like I said earlier, Mike, set up in 1967 by in the Indiana Code, and in fact, I don't think it's up there on the screen, but it's Indiana Code 14-31-1, and it sets out on the idea that nature preserves are how they're created, kind of administratively how they're created, and that they're to protect unusual flora and fauna, and biotic and geologic, scenic areas, features that are educational or scientific in nature. And the idea is to do science on these places, to not only do the kind of cutting edge science about plants and animals and how they interact and what makes these places unique, but also to teach biology, you know, to the kids of Indiana, and to be maybe a less scientific and more retreat-like in their quiet and solitude also. They are not developed very much. We have a few boardwalks, we have trails, we put a parking lot in most places, but not all. And we urge people to be gentle in those places. Some are well loved. Pine Station is one over near, or Pine Hills rather, over near Shade State Park. At Portland Arch, we protect a natural stone arch, so it's not all about plants and animal communities. I think that's, I hope that answers your question.
Let me ask you one more question. As you drive, for example, up from Louisville to Indianapolis, you see Muscatatuck National Refuge, I think it's called.
Right.
How do you all decide? Is there a role for DNR, for example, with those federal refuges? Are they completely administrated separately? How do you decide whether becomes a state preserve or a national wildlife refuge? How is that all? Because to the average Hoosier like myself, there's no difference, I guess. It's all enjoying nature.
Right, right, and that's in many ways that's good that you feel comfortable in any of those, however they're labeled. We cooperate with our federal partners, and we have a tremendous partnership with local units of government, counties and cities and towns. And we cooperate with them both in the acquisition of properties and in the protection of properties. Now, we don't set out to go buffer a place that's a federal property. Particularly, we don't spend Indiana dollars on that, but we do partner when we can, even with land ownership. I think those decisions about whether it's a federal or a state property are mostly about how it becomes available. The Jefferson Proving Grounds, for instance, is now a national wildlife refuge, partly because it travels from being an Army base through a system that allows the federal agencies to have input before we would have input. So if they thought it was interesting and worthwhile, I think the Muscatatuck was, I'm not sure what the origin of that, maybe one of the other panelists knows how that one came about. I do not.
There was a Muscatatuck State Park originally back when
there
the system
was.
was first started. I'm assuming that may be the same property.
No,
I'm
it's not
sure.
the same. It's not the
okay.
same property.
Not,
Muscatatuck State Park is now Muscatatuck County Park, right outside,
okay.
just south of Vernon, Indiana. And this is on US 50, kind of at I-65, near Seymour. It's a it may be a federal demonstration project of wetland restoration too. I'm not sure. You could find that out though for you.
Okay, that's fascinating. Tom, your group has been involved in building trails and making all kinds of improvements to preserves and things like that. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, we haven't actually done any trails on nature preserves ourselves, but talking about nature preserves, we had an opportunity this last summer to visit a great nature preserve, the Ninth-Penny Branch Nature Preserve in Clark County, and there just recently been a trail developed there. It was able to be funded because of a donation from the previous owner of the property, actually, and they had a dedication on that last fall, and we went down there, and it's a great property, lots of nice trail, and they'd love to extend the trail to get more donations. But that's the kind of thing that Parks Alliance would like to help with in the future. Like I said earlier, we're a new organization and just getting started in this, but and I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but that is one of the things we want to do is to raise funds from the private sector to help supplement the state funding to do some extra things like that.
And so you guys are all, the Alliance is a not-for-profit?
Yes, we're 501c3.
Great, great. And it's IndianaParkAlliance.org, right?
Indiana Parks Alliance.
ParksAlliance.org,
yeah.
plural.
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
But yeah, just Google Indiana Parks Alliance, it'll come up.
Okay, great. Now, Jerry, he talked about private contributions, but that's obviously necessarily right now a small part of the funding. Where does all this money come from to run the preserves, the parks, all the properties they're all in charge of?
Well, when it comes to the state parks, we're now about 70% self-sufficient for the operating budget. In other words, 70% of what it takes to operate and maintain these parks comes from the fees and charges that the Hoosiers who visit them pay. And that goes back to Lieber again. His philosophy, which was unique really at the time, was that if we do these parks, if we build these parks, that there ought to be an investment by those who are using them. Other states went the route of it's all general fund, so there was no real investment by the people who use them. And in fact, if you look at some of our neighbors like Ohio and Kentucky and Illinois, they don't have entrance fees, and they wish they did now because they never have, and it's politically impossible to implement something now. So we've always been very proud of the fact that we can bring in as much money as we can to maintain these things.
John, as we sit here, my former colleagues are down the street debating budgets and funding mechanisms for different departments. I'm sure your budget has been considered if it hasn't already been sent through the House. What's it look like this year for at least even maybe increased appropriations for the system?
Well, Mike, Indiana State Parks has an operating budget of about $34 million for fiscal 2017. And about $39 million proposed for the following 2 fiscal years, what they're talking about down the street. About 70% comes from user fees, just like Jerry said, so the rest comes from the state's general fund. That'll be what is decided as part of the state budget. Good to note that about $30 million in user fees came in last year. We don't spend all of that in these proposed budgets. We put some back to make sure that we do have some reserve. But $30 million of user fees, the first time we've gotten over that number. We've really been focused on the bottom line. You know, we have 13 parks that brought in more money than it cost to operate them out of our 25. So that's pretty good for parks.
When we talk about user fees, there are you have a lot of facilities. When I think of the inns that you have, Brown County, Spring Mill. I know, for example, there's going to be a huge Civil War convention at Spring Mill in August, which I plan to be at. I'm sure that generates a lot of money. Is that the kind of revenue you're talking when you all talk about return on investment? It's not just gate fees, right?
No, not just gate fees, but those all those things like your Civil War thing, you probably have to pay a gate fee to get it. Yep. Actually, you'll be able to use your annual pass.
Right, exactly.
But those do generate fees. We have we've been asking our managers to you know, think about making a park campground a good place to be on Halloween, a fun place, safe place, nice controlled environment. So a lot of our parks have those kind of celebrations. Various parks have various things, but we also rent boats. We're in the recreation business, either ourselves or through concessionaires that we hire. So we make money off those operations.
Now, John, with the preserves, is it fair or unfair, I guess, to think that preserves are kind of like the stepsisters of the parks? Do they get short shrift when it comes to funding, or how do they hold their own?
Usually they're the last to get a little dribble when the budget goes up, and they don't have user fees. I mean, just by the nature preserves, situation, they've got a parking lot. They don't have a way to collect from people who visit those properties. So about 60% of their money comes from the general fund, and about 40% from a variety of dedicated grant funds, including Pittman Robertson's one of them, from hunting equipment, user fees on hunting equipment, and so forth. So yes, they have a tough time and are the lesser known, but often the most unique experiences in Indiana.
And generally smaller, is that right?
Yes.
Or is that, okay. John, land acquisition, it's got to be important. There's various ways that land is acquired. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? And maybe while you're at it, what happens to people if people want to donate land to the state parks? Is that something you do, or is it something you discourage? Or tell us about that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm happy to answer that. That's how I started at DNR. I spent 10 years from 91 to 2000 being the director of land acquisition. And I love land acquisition. We have, first let me say, the funding for land acquisition is similar for both the divisions we're talking about here, state parks and nature preserves. The Indiana Heritage Trust was a program started in the 1990s. I believe you might have been there and helped start that, in fact, in the legislature. It was very successful. It also created the environmental license plate, which many people know about and see around the state and love. That license plate was the biggest selling license plate for a long, long time. And just the proliferation of other designs, I think, has
got you up to 50 or 60.
Yeah, it's everybody's got a license plate now. First, Indiana Heritage Trust with the license plate money and some monies appropriated by the General Assembly and some monies transferred by a couple of governors from other funds. We used that, and then in the 2014, I think, the Bicentennial Trust, or 2000, Governor Daniels did that. The Bicentennial Trust was a big effort to buy lands, significant lands, and partner with local units of government funded by $30 million of state money and $10 million of Lilly Foundation money. So, and we did a lot of partnerships, both with Heritage Trust and with the Bicentennial Trust, with local units of government. So we put not only additions to state parks and nature preserves and the other landholders at DNR, but also to county parks, city parks, and many bicentennial projects were more local in nature. So really proud of the way that system ran and how fast we were able to get money into the hands of those local folks to do those things. Last year, the Heritage Trust was improved upon, altered, and I'd say refined and passed, and now is called the Benjamin Harrison Conservation Trust. So the license plate money is transferred into that. It'll automatically be part of that, and any other dollars that come our way would go into that as our main land purchasing method.
I know most people think of Teddy Roosevelt as the father of the state park or the national parks, but really Benjamin Harrison was very much a naturalist 10 to 20 years earlier than Teddy. One thing about the trust I always enjoyed was it was always willing sellers. It was either sellers or donators, if that's a word. So nobody had to worry about eminent domain, their land being taken for a park or something like that, which was great. That's
right, Mike, and I should have answered your question about donations. We encourage donations of properties that we're in pursuit of, and we encourage donations of other kinds to our foundation, or to one of our friends groups, or to the Indiana Parks Alliance, assets that aren't suitable for natural resources but might be assets that people want to give to the cause. So we encourage both of those things. We also encourage bargain sales and help people understand what might be deductible tax-wise.
Sure.
Don't offer professional advice on that, but help steer them and their consultants to whatever makes sense for them.
I want to remind our online guests that if you have questions for any of our four experts here on the Parks and Preserves, go ahead and submit them online, and we will get them to them, I should say, toward the end of this second half hour. Tom, you're an engineer. You're involved in directing the engineering portion of the state parks for many years. I bet you'd love to have a nice big donation for a new roof on one of the inns or a new water system. Tell us about how the infrastructure is kept up.
Well, that's where a lot of the problems are, and so I'm glad you asked that. A lot, like we talked about earlier, a lot of these buildings and structures are more than 50 years old. Many of them date back to the Civilian Conservation Corps era. Certainly there's a lot newer than that. But there was a big building boom in the 70s, I know, and so even those buildings are getting pretty old now. I have difficulty sometimes considering something in the 70s as old, since I was part of that. But but they're really behind on deferred maintenance. There's many millions of dollars of deferred maintenance needed in the state park system, and quite frankly, the state's budget is not what it used to be. The state parks budget and DNR as a whole, really. But and they've fallen way behind on deferred maintenance during the bad times after the 2008 bad economy. DNR had revert over $100 million worth from state-approved budgets, legislature-approved budgets. A lot of that was for work on keeping buildings, and it's okay to postpone to a certain extent. When you've got bad times, you can, maybe wait another year to yourself, put another year to put a roof on your house or to get some work done on your car to paint. But you can't postpone it too long. And they're way past the point they need to do this work, and it's showing up. Recently, I was over at Turkey Run State Park and had an opportunity to go through the end there a little bit. That's certainly one of my favorite parks, Turkey Run. And
see, that guy had the guts to name his favorite park.
He wasn't in charge of it.
No, a little different situation. And I will say on that, Turkey Run in the wintertime, if you've never been in there in the winter, that's when to go. But back to the end, I had a chance to go through there a little bit and trying to look at it from the standpoint of an engineer and having been involved with these projects before. It needs a lot of work. We could easily spend $8 to $10 million just on that one building, and yet that's a good chunk of what Parks gets for all their buildings and all their properties. You look throughout the properties. When I go to properties, I stop and talk to the property managers, many of which I know from my days there, and say, what's your biggest problems? And oftentimes what they'll say is water lines and sewer lines. One property manager said they used to have maybe one water line break a year, now they have 6. Others, they have sewer lines that are leaking, and all this raises utility costs. It's wasted money.
And it's all stuff you don't see. The average person never
right.
really sees. Jerry, you were in charge for, 20 years or so, and I understand you oversaw kind of a philosophical transition in the idea of the state parks. Tell us about that, and do you see any other philosophical seismic shifts coming here in the next few years?
Right. Well, I think what you're referring to is resource management. For many years, the philosophy in state parks was total preservation, let nature take its course. And what you find with that is because man is so impactful, we really have some unintended consequences. A good example of that was the deer population. We had a situation that was most severe at Brown County State Parks simply because of its size, but it was occurring at many of the others as well. And the idea was there are no predators, basically any top line predators left of the deer. And so we had an overpopulation problem. In most situations, there's enough hunting to keep that down and car accidents and things like that. Well, if you have a very large parcel of land that the deer can stay in most of the year or even seek during the hunting season, you have an unnatural situation. So we implemented, and politically we were very apprehensive, but it was our interpreters, in fact, who pointed out the severity of the problem to us. And so I'm very proud to say that we took action. And in 1993, I think it was, that we finally started culling deer at our state parks. And it's been a tremendous success. The ecosystem at Brown County State Park and at our other parks has rebounded tremendously. You could go into areas and not see anything at the ground level that was green during the summer season. As high up as the deer could reach, they would be taking advantage of that, and the deer themselves were malnourished. So that all turned around because we've been actually, on a yearly basis, we analyze the vegetation and take action in that regard. Now, when you talk about resource management, one of the other things that we've really emphasized in recent years is prescribed fire. And, people often say, what do you mean you're setting fire to your state parks or your nature preserves? Well, fire is a natural process, and it's really, we're finding more and more that it's really the reason that many of the things that we have are there, because naturally, natural cause fire would have an impact. So we use it now to manage invasives in some regard. We maintain successional habitats and diversity. Prairie maintenance is, fire is just critical to that. That's why we had prairie as an ecosystem, because periodically the fires would come and keep the woody vegetation from overtaking it. So all that is important. We talk about other challenges. Tom mentioned the deferred funding. It's really, when I talk to managers even today, when I visit parks, their number one issue is that deferred maintenance. We're really, I know John, can't speak out because
yes,
there are always restrictions and I know how that was. I was there. But really, the state needs to adequately fund the maintenance of these places. They're too special.
Have advocates like the Parks Alliance too.
Right, exactly.
John, managing resources also includes human resources, I assume. You were in a senior executive position for many years, having to juggle all these different needs, including people. What's the status now of retirements? Where do we stand? Are we losing all of our expertise? Are the baby boomers leaving?
That's exactly what's happening, Mike. Back in the 70s with environmental awareness, we were able to recruit a lot of really talented people who've spent their whole career at DNR, state parks and nature preserves. And those people are ready to retire or already have retired. And at one point recently, there were 58 full-time vacancies in state parks and a 25% vacancy in nature preserves. So that's where state hiring freezes really cause a problem for when you need professional people to do these jobs, ecologists, biologists, property managers to maintain these properties. And it's a serious challenge, probably next to deferred maintenance. It's the biggest challenge.
Okay, thank you very much, John. We're talking about, I want to get to the use part of the parks too. We talked about the staff becoming older and moving on and trying to recruit younger people. What about, John, what about the users themselves? What are we seeing in changing patterns? We know everything is fee sensitive these days because there's a lot of entertainment possibilities out there, right?
That's right.
So how do you encourage all generations to visit the park, keep it affordable, and yet bring in enough money to keep the lights on and keep the roof on the building, so to speak?
Absolutely. That's the issue. A lot of competition for people's time. We really feel like we have an excellent and a unique product, thinking about getting outside and actually doing activities. But our population is changing. We have we have an aging population in one sense. We have, I think, a feeling many of us have that we're leaving behind a generation of kids who aren't mentored in the outdoors and so aren't as familiar and as willing to go on their own later. We also have cultural changes. We have lots of societal changes. We have lots of new people, immigrants or folks from other states that don't know about Indiana. Many people that English is a second language, so we need to be sensitive about all of those things. Our welcomingness by having responded to those kinds of issues. We also have an outreach effort. Well, first I would say we do make an effort to do outreach to urban people and people less exposed. One of those is the Hoosier Outdoor Experience that we do at Fort Harrison. Our presence at the State Fair is mostly about outreach. We also are really trying to do that with our staff, and natural resources is not a very diverse filled field when we go to colleges and universities, or we have a hard time attracting various different kinds of folks. So we're constantly trying to improve on all those efforts, and preserve all these wonderful historic things, but also be vibrant and connected with the times today.
Thanks. We are getting a lot of questions, guys, so we're going to jump ahead. I want to give John Goss, as the former most senior executive maybe of the group, I don't know, to give us a little bit of an appreciation of the total tourism impact of our parks and preserve, all the work that these guys have done over the years. And then we'll jump right into questions because we want to get to those as well.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, you can see a lot of numbers on the screen, so I won't run through all those, but certainly outdoor recreation is a major contributor nationally to the economy and employment. And here in Indiana, I think we had 16 million visitors in the parks in each of the last 3 years, and that is bringing a lot of revenue to all of those areas that have park properties. I think in Indiana, the tourism generated more than $3 billion, and outdoor recreation is a growing part of that. The tourism industry is now the 7th largest in the state, and state parks are the primary focus of a lot of that outdoor recreation. 186,000 jobs were supported last year in Indiana from all that tourism. And ecotourism is really the next focus, I think, for an awful lot of people. Birding, hiking, scenic walks and drives, as well as adventure tourism is growing. Mountain biking is a good example in the parks that's really taken off and is bringing a lot of younger people to the parks. So, also we have some great events. The Dunes Birding Festival in May is a great example, and of course, Pokagon's Toboggan Run is still popular. So there's a lot of big attractions in our properties. It's a challenge to keep up with them, but we've got some good ones.
You mentioned Pokagon. That was my favorite park as a kid because of the Toboggan Run. I grew up in South Bend, and I think it's now shifted to Turkey Run. So I'm being a little bit of my former politician's self by naming more than one park. We have a lot of questions. Let's jump into those, and we'll just try to grab them and we'll try to direct them to whoever I think maybe has the best shot. And if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, and we'll grab the right guy. Okay. This is coming from a Mountain Bike Association. I'm often reminded that recreation is not in the state park's mission statement, but that my members of the Mountain Bikes Association view recreation as something that should be a part of the mission statement. What's the view of the group on trail-based recreation in state parks?
I'll take a first stab at that. One of the things you do in hindsight is admit when you're wrong sometimes. And one of the things that I really resisted when I was director was mountain bikes. I thought that there would be a real problem with hiking, traditional use of the parks, and mountain bikes. And I was, I think, very much wrong. What's happened in the time since I've left, Brown County State Park was the first. They created, and this is the International Mountain Bike Association folks, who are tremendous trail builders. They built at Brown County State Park just a fantastic system of mountain bike trails. It's become nationally recognized. I just saw recently that IMBA rated it as epic. Now, I don't know what epic means, but I'm guessing that it means really pretty good. And so people are coming from all over, literally, the country to experience the trails at Brown County State Park.
Of course, and you also have the Hilly 100, which goes through the area, and that's another huge one.
So, Mike, I might add to that a little bit. This is John Davis. We have a lot of constituents who use our parks and all of our lands for various uses. Mountain bikes is new. Jerry mentioned International Mountain Bike. I'm not sure if they built that or if it was the Hoosier mountain bikers that built that in Brown County, but either one.
The international group is, they're affiliated with the national group. So.
And they do build great trails. They know how to do that. And we appreciate their partnership. But, like horses, like campers, like everybody else, there is a crowd of users in our parks. So we're trying to manage those parks for the uses that are popular, and we'll try to spread those around the state, but every park can't have every activity that exists. So
sure.
We're balancing.
As I look around the room, and one of the follow-up questions asked about this, we're basically a bunch of old white guys here talking about parks. What's the changing role for women in the parks? Maybe, Tom, you can address this. How do women get involved in helping the Parks Alliance?
Well, quite frankly, the same as anybody else. And that's in terms of if you are interested and use the parks, I hope they are, then contact your legislators for one thing and let them know that they're important to you. And if you want to keep a nice, simple message, I like to tell you, just let your legislators know that parks are important, conservation is important. They need to hear that. Legislators really try to represent the needs of their constituents, and they need to hear from them. And then certainly there's, in addition to the Parks Alliance, a lot of the parks have local friends groups. So if you have a favorite park that maybe one you live close to or one you visit a lot, check and see if there's a local friends group and then get involved with them. That's a lot of the volunteer work that's done on the individual basis on the parks is done by those groups.
That's great.
Mike, I'd add to that also that we have a tremendous a group of park managers. Park managers start out as many times as laborers or as some kind of assistant. They're all assistant managers. We have fewer women in those ranks of management than we should. We have deputy directors, and of course somebody who helped put this together today was Ginger Murphy, one of our very most valued assistant state park directors. But we need to have more women and encourage that, and we do have a lot of assistant managers that will be managers soon that are women. So that's an effort we're always aware of.
Sure. So diversity is important.
Absolutely.
We have a new governor. We're all just getting to know him and his priorities. This is somewhat of a political legislative question to throw out here, so anybody can grab it that wants to. How do you view the Holcomb administration's commitment to funding the state parks, particularly the infrastructure, which Tom eloquently spoke about just a few minutes ago? What does it look like the priorities are going to be this year?
Well, I think the governor's a big fan of DNR and of state parks. But it's, as you know, Mike, it's a partnership between the governor and the legislature. And it's also, it's not exactly a competition, but there's only so much money that goes around. And there are a lot of needs that Indiana has. We talk about those things all the time. In general as Hoosiers, so there's a lot of things on the plates of the legislators, and I think what we're looking for, mostly is probably what I think the governor feels like. These are great assets that deserve to be taken care of.
John, you did not ever name your favorite state park, so here's your shot. My shot at my favorite state park. I'm not gonna do that either. The lack of Tom's the courageous one in the bunch here. I tell you.
I just want to add, in terms of Parks Alliance, we're hopeful that the new administration will be supportive of state parks. Obviously, there's not been much time to really do a whole lot yet, but not only just in terms of supporting financially, but looking for other ways to do things to help them accomplish their mission. Governor Daniels did a number of things when he was governor to help, even though it was bad economic times, to help things. And there's many things like that that the governor can do.
Okay, one quick question. I don't know if there's an expert here in the crowd. I'm sure you can pool together. We're hearing a lot about the comeback of some of the species here in the state. We had a black bear running around northern Indiana earlier this year, or last year, I guess it was. People say there's bobcats all over. What's it look like for our species here?
Well, I think those are good things. Those are evidence that we and our neighbors are being friendlier to the whole system of wildlife. When we have bobcats coming back, when we have bears that feel like there's habitat and there's enough bears in Kentucky to have one want to be a Hoosier. Those are also issues we're going to have to grapple with. We're all going to have to grapple with. You know, part of the balance of 21st century natural areas and urban stuff is that how wild can we be? How wild do we want to be? Jerry was talking about the deer. You know, you can't have an unrestrained browser at the top of the food chain. That doesn't work. But we're not going to have, I don't think we're going to have wolves and, you know, a huge bear population, although maybe we even have cougars that some people seem to believe they've seen big cats.
That's
yeah,
exactly right. We have less than 5 minutes to go. I want to mention, first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us. If there's one more question or two we can answer, we'll try to get to one. But I'd like to give John Goss, one of our really veteran DNR folks, a chance to kind of sum up from your perspective.
Thanks, Mike. DNR is healthy, but could be a lot more healthy. State parks and nature preserves are some of the greatest assets that we have as Hoosiers. We need to treat them as infrastructure, like the legislature and the governor are addressing roads. We need to look at our other properties as important infrastructure investments that will only be valuable if they are maintained and improved. So that's the challenge.
Jerry, your thoughts?
Just echo that. I mean, I saw some figures recently. Back in 2007, our construction budget for DNR that was approved, of course, this was before the problems that ensued with the economy, but that was $72 million for DNR. This year, $38 million. So that's how far we've gone in reverse. And from 2007 to today, do you think costs have gone down?
That's a great point. Tom, you were in that world. What are your final thoughts?
Well, just exactly what they said. I hate to just repeat that, but we really, there's so far that much that needs to be done. You can't do it overnight. We'd really like to see the state take an approach, like John said, like infrastructure, and just like they're talking about with roads and bridges, develop a long-term plan. We'd like to see like a 10-year plan developed for getting DNR state parks back, and not just in terms of repairing things, but looking about things that are needed for the next generation, of users. More trails and nature preserves that really have no real public access now. There's a lot of them that don't even have a parking lot. It's hard to use them if you have to just kind of pull over the side of a gravel road and hope nobody hits you while you're using it. So there's a lot that needs to be done. There really should be a 10-year plan on how best to do that.
We've covered an awful lot of ground here, folks, today. In fact, we've covered about half of the subjects we really wanted to talk about, so maybe that argues for another webinar at some point in the near future. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here today. We have decades of experience here. I want to remind people and encourage people to visit the IndianaParksAlliance.org website if you'd like to volunteer, donate, become active in one of the Friends groups. Obviously, the DNR website helps with access to the parks. There's a great publication they put out called the Indiana Recreation Guide 2017. And John, I'm assuming they can get that either online, or what's the best way to get a hold of one of these?
Oh, you can get those at any park, or a lot of sporting goods stores, or probably at Walmart, maybe even at the sporting goods counter back there.
Gander Mountain, Cabela's, bookstores.
Yeah.
It's a great guide in that. I'm really glad you guys put it out. I want to remind our folks online that this webinar will be archived and will be available at indianaparksalliance.org in the next few days. I wish everybody here on the panel success. And to our online guests, please do two things. One, encourage your legislators to support funding of the parks, and get out and use the parks yourselves. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Good job. Good job, everybody.
Nice work, Mike.
40 plus, Mike.